guys are ready to start. The meeting's being recorded. Okay, let's do it. Continue. All right, now we have to act professional because the meeting's being recorded. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sustainability Month Visual Art and Design Competition Kickoff. I will be your, whatever the guy talking. I'm David Chai. I'm a professor at Animation Illustration at San Jose State. And I'm also involved with the Sustainability Committee, I think that's what it's called, and the Campus Sustainability Committee. And I've also been working with the Green Ninja for about 10 years. So I'm really interested in using art and animation to try to send a good message to people. Let me just go up here to my notes. So I wanted to start off by talking to especially to the students. There's this guy, Pablo Picasso, you might have heard of him, famous artist. And he had a quote. He said, painting is not done to decorate apartments. It's an instrument of war for attack and defense against the enemy. And I can't think of a better war that we need to wage than saving the planet. Because if we don't save the planet, nothing else that we're fighting for matters, because we'll be dead. Right, Hector? Right. So I think it's really nice when we can make art and, for entertainment and stuff, but I think it's even better when we can do artwork and animation and design that would inspire and educate young people, especially young people, in the hopes of saving the planet. And so that's what we want to inspire you young people to do. And I have a great group of people to help kind of kick it off. The first of whom is Professor Irene Carvajal. And I'm going to read this. So if it looks like I'm reading, I'm reading, okay? So I just don't want to be that guy who's faking it and then you're like, I think he's reading. But Professor Carvajal is a multidisciplinary Costa Rican American artist, and her art practice includes printmaking, collage, sculpture, and installation. And you can see it on her picture behind her. She's in her studio, ready to go. And thematically, her work touches on the intersectionality of environmentalism, colonialism, feminism, labor, value, and mass production. She describes herself as an experimental conceptual artist interested in materiality and how to convey meaning through process and medium. This is cool. And her research has led her to explore sustainable alternatives to traditional methods and materials. And that's also cool. And she's exhibited in the United States, Japan, and Costa Rica. She received her BFA from the University of Kansas.
That's good.
And her MFA at SFAI, where she received the Bronze Roller Award. She has participated in art residencies in Japan, USA, Mexico, and Costa Rica. And most recently at La Ceiba, is it pronounced?
Ceiba, La Ceiba Gráfica.
La Ceiba Gráfica in Veracruz, Mexico. Currently, she's lecturing at San Jose State University and the San Francisco Art Institute. So I know we can't hear your claps, but if you go like this, it looks good on the screen. So if you guys can do this. Our next guest, I don't have anything written because I know him. I think I know him pretty well, but Dr. Cordero, Dr. Eugene Cordero, and he's a professor in meteorology and climate science at San Jose State. And he's an author, and he's a fellow burrito lover, like big time. And he's also a climate action superhero. And he is a superhero, and he's out to save the planet. And I met him 10 years ago, and he had the dream of creating something that would teach young people about climate science and the environment in the hopes that they can do something better than all of us meddling adults. And he did it. And so he's developed the Green Ninja, and it's now, we've developed curriculum that has now been accepted in all the middle schools of California, and hopefully will spread all over the world and make some good stuff. So can we have a big round of applause for Professor Cordero, please?
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Professor, and I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
And then our next guest is Dr. Jonathan Fung. And Dr. Fung's an interdisciplinary artist, a professor, and social activist. And he creates site-specific installations, independent films, and public art that explores the human condition, cultural and social justice issues. He's a Mosaic Cross Cultural Faculty Fellow, advocating social justice and diversity at San Jose State, and teaches photography and art classes through a social justice lens. So I'm excited to hear from all of you guys. Dr. Fung, thank you for joining us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And our fourth guest is Dr. Prado, Dr. Carolina. Is it Carolina or Carolina?
Yes, it's Carolina.
Carolina. And Dr. Prado has worked at the intersection of community-based research, environmental justice and border studies for the last 10 years. As a first-generation queer Chicana, she believes that her struggles for social and environmental justice should create an impact on both sides of the border. Her research has focused on social movement strategies for addressing environmental hazards in the San Diego-Tijuana region and analyzed the processes of community participation within border environmental governance structures. So another exciting guest, Professor. And then the last guest we'll introduce is Dr. Costanza, is it Costanza Rampini?
Costanza.
Costanza. And Dr. Rampini is an assistant professor in the Department of Environmental Studies at San Jose State, so a lot of Spartans here. And her research explores the ways in which humans adapt to climate change impacts, especially extreme events. And her fieldwork takes place in Northeast India, in the states of Assam and Arunachal Pradesh. That's good. And in Santa Cruz County, I can pronounce that one. Through her work, Dr. Rampini aims to inform sustainable development and climate action efforts to ensure that they benefit the most vulnerable and underprivileged communities. And then her teaching interests include climate change, sustainable development, environmental justice, political ecology, water policy, and science and technology studies. So we have a whole group of environmental superheroes here. So can we have a big round of applause, please? And so I'd like to start off by just giving each of our guests a few minutes to just introduce or just kind of share some thoughts. And what we want to do is we brought this panel together in the hopes that we would get to show some different perspectives and offer some different ways for our students to maybe think about how they're going to approach ways to depict sustainability topics in their artwork. So if we want to start alphabetically, to be fair, Professor Carvajal is first, and if you'd like to say some stuff, we'd love to hear it.
Okay, everyone can hear me, yes? Okay, cool. So I wanted to start just by thanking you all for being here today and to address you in particular, the students, and talk about why you came to college, why you believed that this would be an important part of your life. And I was, throughout the day, I've been thinking about this. And one of the reasons why I would like to stress, or why I think we all come to university, is to seek a deeper understanding of ourselves, to transform, to find some transformation within ourselves. And as artists, that transformation may occur in the making, in the process of making. We are understanding ourselves differently. You're also here to articulate your own story and to figure out how you fit in the rest of the world. And not to get too metaphysical, but I think that this time of being in college, being in the university, is a trial by fire. It's kind of like a rebirth. It's difficult. It should be difficult. You should be engaged. But at the end of that, you're going to emerge another person. You're definitely going to be transformed. Okay, so that's my little rah about being here. Personally, as David said, I'm from Costa Rica. And Costa Rica permeates me. It's a country, it's only the second country in the world to be able to support itself with totally renewable resources. Our energy sources are all renewable. Costa Rica had set a deadline for itself. I don't remember, I think it was 2015. They were going to attain total independence from dirty sources, and they attained it several years earlier. It's a country that has, for decades, realized that its value and its wealth is in its environment. And of course, as an artist, that permeated me, and that permeates the whole country. So as a printmaker, I'm used to using solvents, using petroleum-based products. And one of the things that I was really interested in is, can I attain the same results using renewable resources? So during the summers, you know, not now because of COVID-19, but during the summers, I take SJSU students to Costa Rica, and we do an environmental printmaking workshop at the University of Costa Rica, where we look at not only are we interested in environmentalism, our process and our materials are sustainable. So what I'd like to ask of you is to think not only of the illustrative qualities and maybe the message in terms of the illusion, you know, what you want to draw, what you want to paint, what you want to sculpt, but also how your materials take part in your making, and how that materiality can further your what you want to say. I think one last thing that I wanted to say is that all of this takes time, right? This way of thinking and this way of approaching the world takes time. And I wanted to do one more little plug for Costa Rica. Costa Rica abolished its army in 1949. By abolishing the army, the money that went into armament was sent instead, was repurposed for education and healthcare. And that has created an environment where the arts and thinking can flourish. So this is in a tiny country. Now imagine our country, the billions of dollars that we spend on armament. If a fraction of that would be spent in education and healthcare and the arts, what we can accomplish. So there you go. That's what I wanted to say today.
Fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
And Professor Carvajal, if you ever need an assistant to go to Costa Rica with you in the summer, please let me know, because
Come on over.
it sounds fantastic.
It's so exciting. It's really beautiful. I would, and you know, all students are welcome. So if this is something that interests you, please come talk to me.
Be careful. We have 400 animation students, so they might all join you, but
the more the merrier.
good.
Thank you.
Okay, and speaking of beautiful, Professor Cordero, would you like to say something, please?
Thanks, Dave, for organizing this and for being a partner in our work together for the last decade. And maybe that's one piece that I'd like to share with folks is that, you know, as a scientist or as a climate scientist, we thought somewhat naively that we might be able to communicate the issues successfully to the broader public about our changing climate and about what's going on in the environment. And we thought that we could draw these fancy graphs with colored, you know, lines going up, and that, you know, policymakers and regular citizens would take that and act responsibly with that. And we obviously learned that that wasn't enough. And over the last few decades, scientists like myself and some of us here have realized that we need to work with other folks to really make this message resonate more broadly, and ultimately to spur action from grassroots individuals and from policymakers, from kind of the bottom and the top, to really create change. And I know it seems the more you learn about the environment, the more depressing it can become. But we have to kind of look at other examples of where we've made progress. And I really feel like that the humanities and let's say art in particular are going to play a key role in this movement, because certainly just the data and the science alone, which is very important, which informs us, isn't enough. So we as a scientific community are reaching out to social scientists and folks in the humanities to help us communicate the issues, the severity of what's going on, the link to real data, but also the part that's related to our heart. And in some of the research that we've done in our group, we come to realize that it's not enough for an individual to understand the science, which is important, and then to also understand what to do about it. That's important too. Those are two key things that an individual needs. But the third is about empathy. Empathy around our planet or about animals or plants. And without that third piece, intellectuals can understand the issue of the environmental crisis, and they can understand what to do about it, but they probably won't do enough to actually make a difference. They may not sway their vote to vote for the candidate who cares about the environment, or to about what's the next purchase in terms of the car or whatever it is. That empathy piece is critical. And I think that's where the arts, and that's how Dave and I really started to work together, is because I understand the science, but really not how to reach people at a deep personal level. And I also feel very strongly that in today's time of severe challenge from the environmental standpoint and social issues, that we need the artists more than ever to help us connect what we're seeing happening in the world to our lives and to how we can, make a difference. And so I think that these types of discussions between the science and the artists are especially, very important. And so for the artists here today, I would encourage you to try to learn a little bit more about the science so that you feel a little bit more comfortable with that. Just like if you were hired to work on a film and they were looking at Costa Rica, for example, you might want to take a trip to Costa Rica to understand the people if you were going to try to tell a narrative story about what's going on. So if you're trying to communicate something about the environment, it's helpful to do a little reading in that area or watch some documentary films so you understand that area. But then don't forget your passion and your connection with people around the heart, because I think that's really what's going to help move people enough to take that extra step to say, no, we're not going to allow fracking anymore. We're not going to do whatever it is, and we're going to really move forward in a way that we know is much more sustainable. So thank you, Dave, for helping me come to that understanding through the work we've been able to do over the last decade.
Likewise, thank you, Dr. Cordero. And next, we'll pass the mic to Dr. Jonathan Fung, please. And Dr. Fung, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, David. I'm going to ask you a question that might seem a little odd, but I want you to reflect on it. How many slaves do you think you employ? How many slaves do you think you employ? Well, if you look at your carbon footprint and supporting specific supply chains, you can determine that. And I think this has a direct effect to our environment. And I just would like to just share if I could share my screen for a moment with some images. This past year, I was really affected by what I purchase, what I consume. And I presented a project to my Photo 40 class on social justice and social practice. And it became a collaborative project with my photo students and also the students that I work with at the Mosaic Cultural Center, the student programmers. And we decided to approach this journey on educating the San Jose State community on what fast fashion is. And as you're reading it now, basically fast fashion is manufacturers making fashions at a really rapid rate instead of seasonal, which most legitimate fashion houses would create. Fast fashion stores are probably where we all shop at every single mall, from H&M, Forever 21, Urban Outfitters, Victoria's Secret. Countless number of stores are mass producing fashion at an amazing rate. I believe the model is within 14 days, a new fashion line is conceived, manufactured, and produced in 14 days, and then shipped to your local store for ready to wear off the rack. And I don't know if you've seen the documentary, The True Cost. If you haven't, it's a really powerful documentary. But only 3% of all clothing are made in the United States, and 97% are outsourced in developing nations. Which brings me to the point where my last 12 years of scholarship has really been focused on human trafficking, sexual exploitation, and also labor trafficking. And so when I was doing more research about the labor trafficking, this ties directly to labor trafficking because labor trafficking is forcing people against their will to work for free or to work for cheap. And so wages are not being equally given to those workers, as well as there's unsafe working conditions. And there's countless case stories that you can read about how factories have been unsafe and have caught on fire or blown up and compromised the health of workers in our developing nations. So last semester, we embarked on this journey, my class with Mosaic faculty or Mosaic programmers. And we decided to do this project to educate again our San Jose State community on what fast fashion is. In the meantime, we were doing a clothing drive through clubs on campus, through Greek life, as well as asking just students and professors to donate clothing that they would have, that they could give to students that needed clothing at San Jose State. And the installation was installation that was kind of a pop-up store that had clothes on racks, as well as a huge mound of clothing that were going to be given away. And the images in the rear of the gallery, which was in the Belcher Gallery in the art building, were images of slow fashion, because we wanted to juxtapose and help educate the community what fast fashion is by showing visual images that my class took of slow fashion. So slow fashion being clothing that's upcycled, so like kind of remade, re-silk screen, clothing that are consignment clothes that are that you can purchase at thrift stores, clothing you actually make yourself. Also looking at the, where the fabric is coming from, the thread, all of that, taking in consideration the supply chain. And then this huge mound of clothing that happened to be very good quality clothing. I didn't see much fast fashion in it. They were all fairly sustainable clothing. And so we gave the clothing on the last day of the installation, and students came. Here's part of the installation of guests looking at the installation, learning about it. I also collaborated with a couple of students from Notre Dame High School, which is the neighboring high school a couple blocks away, where this student created a whole website and researched information about fast fashion and was informing other students about statistics and information she found. The other thing that I want to mention is I also brought in alums that were, they had their own small business of upcycling clothing, selling thrift store clothing, repurposing clothing, and they were for sale for a very nominal fee. So instead of just showing the art, I wanted a call to action so students and the community could actually understand what were the options of purchasing clothing at our local mall. And these were all, this gentleman here, Yusef, actually was a civil engineering major that graduated last year, but on the side, his passion was making clothing that was sustainable. And these were the students coming in the last day of the exhibition of fall 2019 that could come and take everything except for the photographs, hangers and all. I saved this dress actually for Irene because I thought it would look good on her. Irene, I don't know if you still have this, but that one, Irene, was one dress left and I gave that one to Irene.
I still have it.
Good. And so this is the URL. If you want to know how many slaves that you employ by what you consume, you actually can go to that link. I'll put it in the chat, but let me show you one more thing here. So this is the link here for endslaverynow.org. It's a nonprofit, endslaverynow.org. Within that, you can go to one of these headings here to find the slavery footprint. Enter in your address and you will answer a survey, and it will tell you how many slaves actually work for you. And it is quite appalling to find out how many. I think I employ 42 slaves from my carbon footprint, and I am aware of what I purchase, but having a family, that definitely changes the actual the output of what you consume. So after we did this, as we were doing this research, students really they learn, and now they can make a conscious choice. They're no more ignorant about the issue. And so it really opened the eyes of students. I think it opened the eyes of the viewers that came to the installation. So I just wanted to show this because I think this is another way that maybe you can approach a sustainability project for this competition, where you collaborate with your peers. You maybe even collaborate and bring your professor in, maybe as a consultant. And you do the research, but you hammer out the outline and you figure out who your audience is, what kind of impact that you want to make on our campus. And you just go step by step like that. But I think collaboratively would be nice instead of just trying to do it on your own, because having a team, and me having a team of students really doing the work. I mean, I was there to curate and help direct, but they did they really did the work for the installation, and we're proud of the results. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and I can go ahead and put that link in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Fung.
You're welcome.
And next, Dr. Carolina Prado, please, if you'd like to take the mic.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm super excited about this project and everything that's coming up. Funnily enough, I also had a question that was at the forefront of my mind in terms of thinking about talking with you all about environmental issues and art. And I think one of the things that at least in my view of art, that really drives me is thinking about how you want people to feel engaging in your art in whatever medium that is, right? And as I was thinking about that question, I thought about one of the biggest types of art that moves me particularly, which is movement art and street art. As you all heard in my bio, I study social movements. That's kind of what I have been doing for a long time. So I'm really driven by the idea that systems can change by people power. And so for me, all of the art around that is really exciting. So in terms of thinking about some examples of what different arts has, like really brought out in me, I was thinking about the first time that I ever saw puppeteers for social movements. So like these huge puppets that are made to represent, different, they could be like satirical, right? Where they represent corrupt leaders, or I've seen some really huge ones of like sea turtles and things like that for different movements. I think the first time I ever saw a puppeteer was during the WTO protest in Seattle in the 90s. And I thought that for me, that really brought out the sort of larger than life feeling of what it means to get together with a group of people and strive to change something, which can feel really monumental of a task, especially when it's something as huge as, I heard you all talking about the issue of climate change, right? That's huge and international, and seems like sometimes you're, coming up to a wall over and over again, but things, art can really make you feel that sort of monumental feeling. I know that last year during the San Francisco Climate March, there were these huge chalk paintings that were made on the streets of San Francisco that also had that feeling evoking of, larger than life. In terms of the area that's really close to my heart, where I've done a lot of my work and lived in different periods of time in the Tijuana-San Diego border, then that region is one where the border wall itself ends right into the Pacific Ocean. And one of the really interesting and just like I think it, like I gasped or took my breath away moments was when there was an installation piece there where they painted the border wall sort of like a sky blue, and so in different directions where you would look at it, it kind of looked like it wasn't there anymore. And I think for me, especially as someone who really appreciates the sort of like quotidian pieces of art, right, where you walk down a street and you see on a sidewalk like I don't know, for me, I don't know, I'll read something that says, you know, like abolish prisons, and I'll be like, huh, someone wrote that there, you know, someone took their time to take out a marker and write it on the sidewalk. And so for me, that border wall art was really evoking, especially about how much a built environment shapes your world, right? So how different it would look for you to look out at the beach to another part of the beach without seeing this huge monstrosity of a wall there, right? And so I thought about that as well. And one of the things that really inspired me in this, it must have been last week, but either this week or last week, sometimes I'm losing track of time here since the beginning of the fall, but I saw a clip of the WNBA walking out onto the court with shirts that had 7 bullets drawn onto their back. And I thought of that as a collective piece of art, right? Like Jonathan was talking about how, you know, you all can be driven to do work together to create art. And I thought that must have been such a beautiful process, and maybe difficult too, right? For a group of people to, in all reality, put their jobs on the line to make a statement about the murder of someone in their community. And I think of, you know, all the different types of mediums that is, right? Like installation art, and puppets are, you know, paper mache, and sometimes take a lot of sewing and things like that, right? So all of the ways in which you could take different types of materials to create and evoke an emotion in someone, and evoke I think it was Eugene who said a call to action, right? So I'm really excited to see sort of what calls to action and what emotions you all evoke out of us and from your art. And yeah, I look forward to seeing all of the pieces that you create. Thank you all.
Carolina, I just put a link to Ana Teresa Fernandez Borrando la Frontera, which is the project that you were referring to.
Yeah, thank
so
you.
You guys can look at it because it really is amazing.
She has a lot of really amazing like wall related pieces.
Yeah.
They're really cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Prado. And our 5th guest, Dr. Rampini, if you'd like to go.
Yes, hi everybody. It's nice to see all your faces, some familiar faces, some colleagues I already know. Hopefully colleagues that I'll get to collaborate with. I think part of what's great about this, and thank you for organizing it, is also hearing from colleagues that I didn't know yet and thinking about how we have so many things in common and interests in common. I don't necessarily have anything new. Everybody just spoke so well and said everything, but I think I just want to echo things that have already been said by everybody. You know, there is a lot of, I think, concern and awareness around sustainability, but it is a mammoth project and sometimes people get stuck. And I think sometimes we also, you know, I think of climate change also like Dr. Cordero and others here. And so sometimes it's easy to think of it as far away or affecting other people or in the future. And so I think one of the roles of art is to help scientists communicate and help, as many of you have said, make people feel that it's here, you know, make people feel whatever environmental change or crisis it is that you want to focus on with your pieces, you know, make people feel something about it, give them goosebumps or whatever feel you all, you know, anger, whatever it is. Sadness is also fine, I think, at times. And I think also challenge yourself to think about the built environment. I think Dr. Prado brought that up, you know, not just thinking about the natural sort of lush green environment, but also the built environments and how that is part of our environment and who gets to live in which kinds of environments. And so not, you know, thinking broadly about the term sustainability. Some of the other things that people mentioned, I think, were audience. And I think, you know, who are you speaking to and who's your audience and whose stories are you telling? I think is going to be really important in terms of how you go about your piece also. And so, you know, are you telling your story? Are you telling the story of your community? How do you speak to the audience that you want to communicate with? And how do you make them feel? Because we don't all feel the same way about the same things. And I think, you know, maybe not for this particular project, I don't know if all of you have time, but going forth or for this project, I think the idea of collaborating with non-artists and scientists and scholars and academics who might have some great ideas to to contribute, but may not want to be part of the more creative sort of material project of the art piece. I think it'd be really great. I mean, I can think of ways that I could definitely integrate, art students in some of the projects that I'm working on right now with the city of Santa Cruz. So I think there is definitely ways for us to continue this conversation past this particular forum. And I also, I really wanted to echo the call for materials and thinking about, what kind of materials are you using? How is your art in itself a project of sustainability? And I know right now, I assume the challenge is also, COVID and being in this online platform that thinking broadly about what media you want to use. And I know that you might be limited in maybe what the kind of media you would have naturally gravitated towards, but it might open up other possibilities and other ways of thinking about it. And and I really look forward to seeing all your projects.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Rampini. And let me tell you, I've been on a lot of committees for the faculty committees, on the university, and they're usually so boring. They're so boring. And then I got on the sustainability board or committee, and I was just so energized by hearing students and faculty and staff that are excited about doing good stuff for the environment. And I'm getting that same feeling now. It's just so nice to hear the different stuff you guys are working on, and really pumps me up. If I can share, before we go into Q&A, I'd like to share with the students just the constraints of the art itself. And what we're gonna do is I have a Photoshop document that I'm gonna share with you guys, and the submissions are gonna be digital. But that doesn't mean you can't paint, you can't make collage, but you'd have to photograph it to make it fit this particular dimension. And what we wanna do, and I'll share my screen with you. Oh, Debbie, can I please have permission to share my screen? we wanna size our artwork so that it can be printed on 11 by 17 poster size, but also works for video for 1920 by 1080 dimensions. So I'll share with you this guy in a second, or whenever I get the power. I have the power. And so this is the thing I'm going to share with you guys. And what it is we want to make sure that all the important stuff fits between these two lines, so that when we crop it to be on the screens around campus, it's all going to show. But we also want the backgrounds and the image to extend past here, so when we print them on 11 by 17, they will be full. So this is the only kind of constraint you have in terms of artwork, is that it just has to be at this pixel dimension. Screen resolution is, or not screen resolution, but the resolution is 300 dpi, and it's a CMYK file because we're going to be printing it. So, and I will share a link in chat with you, a place where you can download that Photoshop guy right now. And I think if it's okay, we'd like to open it up to questions. And if you guys have any questions. And my first question is for Irene, is where can we sign up for the Costa Rica trip? Just kidding. I'm not kidding, but not kidding. Okay, here we go.
When COVID's all said and done, I'll let you know.
All right, I'm ready. And there's a Google Drive link where you guys can download that PDF template. So this is very exciting. So does anyone have any questions, or? Like one question I was going to ask too is of the students, if any of you guys are interested in collaborating with some environmental studies or meteorology students, let us know and we can put you in contact with the professors, and I'm sure we can, because that's fun. Like working with Green Ninja, like I've learned so much, and I didn't even mean to, like I learned about composting and recycling and sustainability and, and look, Dr. Rampini would love to hear from the students about topics they're considering for your projects. Have you guys given any thought to it yet, or are there any particular topics of sustainability that are close to your heart? Or Charisse, I know you're a vegetarian. I mean, is that something you want to celebrate or promote?
Maybe, or fast.
Sorry, Charisse, you kind of chonked out on us there a little bit.
Oh,
Sorry.
Yeah, we
I was
lost you.
saying veganism or like fast fashion because it's hard to think about it like in the moment, but once you start thinking about it more consciously, you start like seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Casey's also vegan. Hey. Any of you other guys? And people are saying, Amaya says, forest and river ecology. Amaya, if I remember right, you're from Carmel Valley, is it correct?
Yeah.
And did your surroundings inspire you for some of this stuff growing
Yeah.
up?
I basically live in the forest. If I walk outside, all it is trees.
Whoa. So you're whoa.
Oh, and my dog too. So.
Oh, I thought you were getting mad at me. That's great. And someone else put something in chat, but you guys do it so fast I can't do it. Someone's thinking about fast fashion. Amy Elise, thinking about the fast fashion. Do you want to say anything, Amy, or just texting is all?
Well, my dad was a labor organizer, and so the fact that a large amount of people on the face of the earth work for under substandard conditions, and that we like consume this stuff and we don't know how to just like we're losing the ability to make stuff ourselves and mend the things we have, and that's always really bothered me. So I think that appeals to me to do as a subject.
Are you thinking of particular mediums or anything? Like, is it going to be recycled fabric and that kind of stuff, or that'd be fun.
I don't know. I'm just kind of kicking ideas around now.
Cool. Well,
I'm glad I came and watched this though. So.
Me too. How about the rest of you guys? Lillian, Sally, Kiana says, look, I'm like Kiana says, Kiana from Lincoln in California says, I was thinking about maintaining the urban forest and educating people, and then it disappeared from my chat. Jeez, I was on such a roll. About sustaining their own environments near their homes. That's great, Kiana. Come on. You could just say it too, Kiana, if you want to. We have like just 25 people here. We're, it's kind of casual. Yeah.
David?
Yes?
Hi, can I just throw out a couple of ideas for students to think about? Because we did it from the Sustainability Board. So the first year we did an art project, we worked with somebody in the community that was cleaning the local creeks, the Guadalupe, no, it's the other creek, the Los Gatos Creek, the Los Gatos Creek system. So he had a crew that went out and picked up all the spray paint cans that our local artists were using to spray under the bridges. And we built a tower on campus, well, off campus, but we brought it to campus. So we built a tower from the spray paint cans to kind of demonstrate like, recycling these and creating a tower from it. And then last year, our sustainability board and students on campus, we did a Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead altar, and we tried to dedicate it to endangered people and environments and plants and animals that are being impacted by climate change. And that was part of the Day of the Dead altars in the library last year. So just a couple of ideas of just different ways to use things. And then for that one, people just brought, they made frames and brought pictures. We had an artist, as you recall from the department, who made animals using recycled aluminum cans. So it could be anything, So anyways, some ideas.
Awesome. Thank you, Peggy. And we do have about 10 minutes left before the end of the broadcast. Does anyone else have anything they want to share or thought of during the conversation, or Irene?
Yes, may I, if any of you are curious about maybe making your own inks. So I think of limitations as actually kind of exciting. We're in this limited space, right? As David was saying, we're limited because of the pandemic. And yet it's kind of exciting to look at our environment in a different way and to really observe what's around us. So if you don't have the materials, isn't that a way of talking about the environment, right? And kind of accepting those limitations. So if you're interested in learning how to make inks or how to make paint, from materials in your backyard, perhaps, or from food. I'm happy to help you and give you some pointers as to how to make really and permanent ink from beets and flowers and fruit and yeah.
I have a question. Is there a way that would be best to contact you about that?
Let me put my email in the chat.
Actually, could all the professors, would you mind putting would the kids say, would you mind dropping your socials in the chat? That means like email, I think. I'm not quite sure. But that would be fun. If you don't mind the students harassing you.
No.
Good.
It's in the chat now. Let me make sure that it's correct.
Irene, can I just say thank you for mentioning that? And you know, Dave and I have been friends for a decade. Every time I go to Dave's home he invites me to the winter party, Dave's got some new project of what he's doing. Like he's making his own soap, or he's making his own, you know, like you just see this evolution. And I think that's nice for all of us to be learning new things. And that's why we're sharing like this. You know, oh wow, you can make inks from beets. You know, I'm interested in that too. And I think that all of us kind of sharing as a community. And that's why I could see Dave's eyes perk up like, oh, I can see what your next endeavors are, Dave.
We're going to make the next film out of beet ink. And also Professor Cordero, I visited his house and I told you he's a climate action superhero. And when I went to his house, it's like the climate action superhero bat cave. And the guy's he's got solar, and he's got, is it called gray water system? He's got chickens, he's got artichokes growing in the front yard, and bongo drums in the living room. It's the coolest place. So really inspiring.
Hey David, just I'll put my 2 cents in. I did put in the link, in the chat, the link to the guidelines. If you're interested, there should also be a link to the Google Drive when you're ready to submit. I had students check. You should be able to submit without asking for access. But if you do need access for some reason, I'm always checking my emails. So please.
Faculty are allowed to make submissions too, except you're not eligible for any of the prizes. But it seems fun. Cool. Well, if anyone does not have any more questions, who shall we ask to conclude the presentation? Amaya Gomez, would you mind concluding with a wise set of words that start with, I was born amongst the trees, comma, and then just kind of finish with something profound. Would you mind doing that, please?
For sure. I was born amongst the trees, and I planted my seed, and now I am growing more sustainability in my thoughts.
With that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to follow Professor Gomez's lead and sprout like a tree and go forth into the weekend with harmony of nature and a love for the world. Does that sound okay?
Absolutely.
All right, shall we peace it out, ladies and gentlemen? I want to thank our professors and our hosts for putting together this beautiful presentation. And
thank you for moderating. You did awesome.
Thank you. I even got my green t-shirt on, you know, the good stuff. And then I'll see some of my students in about 5 minutes at the next presentation. And then you guys all have a nice day. And thank you guys for all participating and saving the world.
Bye.
All right, peace out in 3, 2, woo!
Peace out.